When I first came to visit the space, the first things I noticed were these columns and the barrel vault and the intersecting of the two barrel vaults, and it spoke of art history. And so I came up with this thought: education is the spirit of thought. You know, it might take them 2 or 3 months until they read this. To the people that use this space, look around you. You know, observe the columns used by the Greeks in the great temples of the Aegean. The barrel vault design of the roof is taken from the Roman arch, the keystone of Roman architecture, 700 BC to 500 AD. And the cross barrel design is common in the great cathedrals of Europe. And then Gothic architecture also is highlighted by the magnificent stained glass seen at the end of each barrel vault. And the forms on the benches represent contemporary thought. The hand-carved designs on the benches, surfaces, and the semicircular stone reliefs reflect the primitive style. And then I tell them, always look around you, inquire of your environment. The only boundary to learning is your scope of vision and curiosity. But I'm surprised they haven't been graffitiized or anything, you know, with spray cans. Maybe they all use it up in Dallas, and then by the time they get out here to the north, they don't have any more spray paint. There's nothing easy about sculpture. At least I haven't found anything easy about it. Leaves are starting to fall already. Must be the fall coming. So you'll be able to tell what time of the year I did each one of these dishes by looking and seeing if there's leaves in the mixture. I did this sculpture in 1973. I was just finishing my undergraduate work at North Texas State University. I was exploring stone carving. And the fella sold me this old tombstone for $10, and he was kind of chuckling as I was taking the stone away, saying that, son, you'll never carve this thing because it's just too hard, too darn hard. So I said, we'll see. And so with the block, solid block, the tombstone shape, I got a piece of styrofoam as large, of course, scaled down, and I carved my shape. And I knew I had to resolve this problem because the tombstone was only 7 inches wide. With the styrofoam carving done, I commenced to, with the star drill, hitting it and producing the hole. And getting through the stone was the beginning of my adventure with this piece. Just take a look at the grain, just see how beautifully it moves through the piece. I call it Kathy's waltz, just from the fact that I can't waltz, and my wife, and so I gave it to her as my waltz to her. After completing this sculpture, I realized I accomplished all there was to accomplish in contemporary design at the time. How in the heck can you do better than this? And it was time to move on. I can't just stay and just to do sculpture for monetary means. It's got to constantly be a challenge to me. I went to Italy in the Colli Studios in his courtyard in Carrara. There were 5 or 6 sculptures similar to this one. And people from around the world would bring their small little maquettes and give it to his studio. And then they would, in 6 months, come back from Germany, Spain, Asia, and pick up the sculpture that 5 or 6 Italians had jumped on and carved out. So there's something much more really to sculpture than pretty ribbons of marble and highly polished pieces. So instead of having a choice of staying in Carrara, in Pietrasanta, and working there, I chose to sit and watch the statue makers and learn how to use the pneumatic chisel. I really didn't know enough to stay there anyway. But I chose to stay there and then for 2 weeks and then go on to Florence, and that brought me the new thought to see Michelangelo's Unfinished Prisoners, the rough and the polish. I stayed there in front of those statues for 3 days, taking notes on them. And he brought me the newfound art that I brought back to the States with me. Okay, that's one back. I've had a lot of practice doing this because after my master's degree I spent 10 years at Denton Monument setting tombstones, and that's what we did, mix cement for the foundations of the tombstones in the cemeteries. Everybody thought I was crazy, especially my family back home in Cleveland. You know, here's a guy with a master's degree and he's working in a cemetery setting tombstones and that, but I really went there to learn how to cut the granite and learn how to handle the stone. That's an education you can't learn from a book. I married Kathy in 1973, and I got my bachelor's degree that year, 73. And then we went to Europe, to Italy, to learn how to carve stone. This is my mother here, and my father. He was always a character. He still is. Here's me on the raft. My Uncle Tom must be taking the pictures. The one that was the commercial artist. That's my father's brother. He was the one that would take us down to the art museum when we were kids. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. 93rd and Union was the area of town. And I don't really remember really that much about it because I left there at an early age, about 6 years old, and we moved out to the eastern suburbs of Cleveland, a suburb called Maple Heights, to St. Wenceslaus Parish. And Maple Heights was great. It was a neighborhood where I said the people looked out their front windows and doors and looked at the kids playing in the street, and the sport they were playing let them know what season it was. You know, we'd be out there playing baseball in the summer and football in the fall and winter. I enjoyed football from early on, maybe about the 5th grade. We had full in CYO Catholic Youth Organization in the north. Kids get their football uniforms in 4th or 5th grade, and we start playing early on. And I always loved defensive end. And I think it was because that I was given a job. No one could get around me. I had to box the play in and had to really stop the play before it developed. And it really was a good responsibility and a challenge for you to do. And I carried that into high school. But I really didn't have the size, and I went into college at Miami of Ohio. I went to Miami of Ohio because my friend Ernie Kellerman was playing there. And he was a great quarterback, and ended up going into professional football, playing for the Cleveland Browns. But it was all in vain because I ended up flunking out of school. One more bag, and then we're ready to start working the cement down. I've got to make sculpture where I live at, in the kitchen or in the backyard. For 15 years I lived in an apartment, and we had people married and buried in that apartment, and I would make all my sculpture right there on the back porch. So it's not one of these big things that the artist has to go off to his studio and shit like that. I just get up and make everything so real practical to me. If you're a real artist, you'll make art anywhere. You don't have to have any excuse to make it or not make it. And Denton is perfect to live at because it's right in the middle of the country. You could get to LA or New York with no problem. And the weather you can't beat. If I was back in Cleveland, I'd only be able to work, 6 months out of the year outside. It's 3 and 3. I always use 3 elements within. I think 3 balances really, really well. I've also called it Faith, Hope, and Charity, which I think a city needs to embellish. Mr. Lord opened an art gallery up here, and we were to dedicate this to the city. The mayor came to his gallery and started the first treatment of the stone by chipping off a big chip of granite, which I gave her. I think she could come right here and put it to this area that she chipped off. And then my wife was working at Safeway at the time. One of my sculpture teachers were coming through her Safeway, her line. She was checking people out. And he came through the line and said, is that the only way Jack could get his name in the paper by donating a sculpture to the city? And I took really offense of that. And I said, no, it really wasn't the reason I was doing it. It's the reason that Denton gave me and my family and me and Kathy so much over the years that I wanted to give something back to the city. So I came here and installed it myself, and that's why there's no card with my name on it or anything else. It's been here for 18 years, and not many people know who did it. And that's what I enjoy about it. it doesn't matter who did this. And here 18 years later, I'm looking at it and it's weathered fine. And I also casted the base and it works real well. Every once in a while I've come and turn it. In fact, I think sculpture's the hardest profession anybody could ever contemplate in doing. That's why there aren't that many sculptors. A lot of hard work with no monetary return. But I've always been a person, I think I learned it first in football, that if I worked hard enough at something, I could really make something happen. But anyway, I was going to go into college football, coaching. To Schembeckler, when I went on probation with grades, he put me to coach the freshman football team. And John Makovic was coming out of Wake Forest at the time, and me and him were coaches together on that freshman football team. And now he's earning $450,000 a year at Texas, and I'm still playing in the mud here. This was just material that was excess material, hydrostone, that I ended up making a ball out of. And I would never attempt to do anything more than have this as what it is. It's just a round ball that I just kind of shaped in my hand. And this is the purity of this particular thing. I talk to it and it talks to me. And I don't ever try to make it something it isn't. And I have that real close connection to it by why, I don't know, how, I don't know. Maybe being around these things for so many years, but even newer things I pick up, and that I know its soul, and I could just feel, I have the respect for everything and anything. All I want to do in making sculpture is present its beauty, the material's beauty, and then put little touches of man to it. That's all you need to do. But there's a symbiosis there of working between man and material and showing each's nature. Man's nature and the nature of the material you're working with. And if you could do that, then you're releasing both. And you're not dominating the material, you're just showing the material off. I chose the circle and the star and the line and the dot. And with those elements there of drawing, I could put anything into composition. I just put little touches of man, a star, a circle, a line on the surfaces to compose the piece. As a musician would compose music, I just use these drawings to get people to walk around the sculpture, you know, to look at it. I don't really care one way or the other if they understand what I did. And you really have to do it for yourself. And like, I've never compromised just to earn money. Every sculpture has to be a new adventure for me. I could stop and do real pretty little sculpture things and get rich. I guess get rich. I don't make money, at least, which I've never done in my life. And that brings me to Kathy. I could never have done anything without Kathy. She's been with me for 22 years now, and been mainly the person that brings the money in, you know. But we've had 22 years of great life, along with Rosie. She's 11 years old. And everything just kind of comes to you if you stay honest between yourself and what's around you, I believe. Once you start compromising to do sculpture that these art dealers want you to do or art galleries want you to do, you've lost it all. If you stop and to compromise, stop to sell something, to do a style, to do sculptures of beautiful designs, you know, contemporary thought that could go for thousands of dollars, then you are just getting thrown a bone, you know. You're performing. I know people say, well, why don't you do one or two to make $1,000 or $2, you know. That would just be wonderful. But see, it doesn't work that way at all.
You know, I'll work in any kind of environment. That's why I can work in front of a lot of people. I've done that in Art Walk, you know, just hundreds of people on the sidewalk, and I'd be there carving on my stone. Because it's second nature to me, you know, making art. It's no big deal. The big deal, or the hard thing about it, is to get through life. Making art is the easy thing.
The best place to cry, too, is in the shower. I found that out.
They'll be here 100 years from now. They don't get buried or something. And they'd be able to see it, you know? Look at this. 1994. Where did this come from? That's why on the back of these I write all kinds of information. Where the top, you know, my name, the title, date, Denton, Texas. First thing I had was this block of stone here, and it was tilted a bit. It's a bit askew. And I really didn't know how to go about attacking this stone here and really do what I want. I'm a very big fan of art history. I think it's very important. But anyway, I had my Florence guidebook that we had there in Florence when we were visiting there. And I came upon, of course, Botticelli's Birth of Venus, which is Venus on the half shell. But if you notice, it had a counterpose about it, a shifting or a little slant about it. So voila, I had my thought. So what I did was try to capture the movement of hers just through lines. And I gave her a shoulder here and some lines of force and a couple fingers here to capture her arm going. And then I added a small face. When I do things and carve, it's my own world. I don't try to conform to what has been done. So, with the sculpture done, I had just gotten this beautiful black granite from up there in Cleveland and split this slab of granite in half, and they became her guards, you see. And then when I placed them in verticality, I go with a crayon and draw on the surface of the stone my drawings that I think I need to be drawn. When I was plug and feathering it, my chisel got away from me and made bruises on the stone. So what I do all the time is bring attention to your mistakes, and all of a sudden they redeem themselves and it's not a mistake at all. And I placed my piece on top of these elements, and it just really, really worked well. Then I knew I had to get a really good way of communicating my thought to the audience or to whoever is viewing the work. And so I used the technique I learned in sandblasting the tombstones, and I placed the title, Venus and Her Guards, and then I place in parentheses with reference to Botticelli's Annunciation. I lost $50 today. They called me to go in to substitute teach. And I told them I had to go do this, so I lost $50. For some reason, this is all supposed to be happening. Okay, off to Big D, huh? Important thing, because you're creating your own space. You're having elements within space, and it's your invention that makes them work. Well, when I make a piece of sculpture and place it, then it has its own personality. It gathers its own properties and genes from the environment and its own being. You can't apply what's already been known and said to it. And it sets up the rules that it has to confide to. It doesn't go according to anybody else's rules. It's a very important principle that you have to get straight in your mind. Once you create something, a sculpture, it has to stand on its own, within its own space. And it's the form that's what's important. Consequently, it could be cracked, it could have core pins coming out of it, it could have the ceramic shell left on it. It's the form that's what's important. That's what we just put. The human condition makes rules of how it should look. And so you miss out on a lot of beautiful adventures by trying to have this particular form conform to. So it's so ridiculous. People go into galleries, and if the sculpture doesn't read like it's supposed to read to them, then they think it's not worthy of their consideration. This is my world. This is my art. And I don't care if anybody understands it or anything, because in 20 years they'll see my body and my work. This Venus and Her Guards that I placed at the Garden Center, direct influence of Botticelli. And people there at the fair don't know Botticelli from asparagus, you know. They don't understand what's going on. I hope some educated people have at least heard of Botticelli. Part of a life for rejections, you know. You used to be, but after 20 years, you're not frustrated because people don't look at your work or take part in it, you know. Well, you've set up. My father always says, you made a bed, now sleep in it. And I've realized that I've made my bed, and it's not a type of art that is commercial, you know, and it doesn't sell. And everything's okay if you realize that. And now I'm brink of another direction, study of film, which I always had in the back of my mind. All these 20 years I've been doing photography, and I've always been working with space, elements in space. This is my first film, but this is a good example of maybe what to expect, what I'll do in the future. It's no big thing. It just should be an extension of your being, you see. And then you put it out there, and then you go on from it. You can't stay in one thought. You have to go on. It's another avenue, another medium, discipline to try and conquer. Plato said the excellence of beauty of every work of art is due to the observance of measure. And it holds true for every visual art, even in film. That little storyboard that I kind of threw together was kind of an inner structure that, you know, you could feed off of. I'm going to go through these stages and learn what I need to learn, just like I went on the road to learn about sculpture. You know, I'll do films that are honest portrayal. People will actually see. I'm not going to hide anything, show the inventiveness of it, and just have fun. There you go. Nice. And I'll put 4 of those together to create a base. I'm excited about the call that came requesting some of these sculptures, because right now we're getting it down to not too much money in the bank, and hopefully I'll be able to sell some things to keep on going. One thing I do is not talk too much about my sculptures. You know, I let them talk for themselves. You know, too many people, you have to talk about and explain your sculptures. Well,
routine claim form, no cancellations due to heavy usage.
What's the use, you know, making
3 employees. So whether you're small,
and besides, you can never, I've already said that, even compare or come close to what your sculptures say. You're really stupid. You know? The artist is usually looks very stupid next to his sculptures. That's why I always, if I can, turn my back to them. Noguchi used to do that.